To politics now, DA Gauteng leader Solim Simanga says incidents in the Ekurhuleni Council are not how South Africans should view coalitions in the country. This follows a tumultuous 2 weeks in the council, which ended with DA Mayor Tanya Campbell re-elected to her position. Campbell was removed as mayor after the ANC tabled a motion of no confidence against her. But disagreements between the EFF and the ANC collapsed the ANC's plans.
Will be taking a very short view of everything that is happening. You would know that there's quite a number of municipalities across South Africa, not just here in Gauteng, that have actually been coalescing for quite a long time. In fact, the Ekurhuleni was part of a coalition government before. We have had coalition governments even in the Western Cape, even in the city of Cape Town before. The DA had actually won it outright. But be that as it may, I think we need to find each other. And I think it's getting better from where we had been in 2016, in the previous term. And, there's a whole lot of lessons that have been learned, and there are lessons that are being learned right now. And I think, if we are to reflect, yes, there have been mistakes that have been made along the way, and we shouldn't be really trying to hide those mistakes. But we should be then saying, how do we learn from those mistakes? How do we better communicate within the coalition parties and with, the message of unity from the coalition parties, to the residents of a particular area that we're supposed to be servicing. And once you're able to then do that, and there's a clear plan in terms of how you're then moving forward, then there will be a better way in which we're able to then, service the people that have elected us into office.
Right now, another vote of no confidence in Ekurhuleni Mayor Tanya Campbell cannot be held for the next 3 months. That's according to the Gauteng DA leader Solim Simanga. The DA is pleased with the latest developments. Without the EFF votes, Campbell would not have been able to reclaim the mayoral chain. Simanga spoke to the South African Morning earlier today.
Legally, they cannot bring that motion for the next coming 3 months. The system doesn't allow them to do that. So I think this has also been a little bit of, politics that were coming from the ANC in Gauteng, leading to the National Congress that they will be having in December. As you would know, that, Gauteng has been blamed for having lost the metros and having lost the momentum that they had. And therefore, they want to regain some relevance going into their elective conference in December. And this is why, you'd find that they would do anything and everything to make sure that they remain relevant, in the political sphere. And we cannot really be concentrating on that. As I said to you earlier on, Gareth, ours is to concentrate on servicing the people. Now, that being said, what we will then be embarking on is to strengthen our coalitions and to try and build up a majority in areas where we are actually in government, especially in minority governments, and also to try and build a majority government. And also to get over this issue of jostling for positions and concentrating on the basis or on the issues of delivering of services to the people that, are desperately in need of services, like the people of Ekurhuleni. And that's what we're concentrating on.
All right, for more on this story, I am joined by Mapaseka Muroa. She's a political analyst. She joins us now virtually. Mapaseka, thank you very much for your time. I mean, what a waste of time, a waste of court's time, residents' time, and a waste of money, really. This whole debacle has been in Ekurhuleni and in Johannesburg.
Hi, Masero. Thank you for having me. I think for the residents, this is something that's sad, particularly because these are individuals who have taken to the streets and to demonstrate how unhappy they are with the lack of service delivery. So for the residents, this is unacceptable. It's sad. However, for the political games that are unfolding in council, particularly for the African National Congress, it seems that they are now learning how to be an opposition political party. Yeah. And we see this with them learning to use these mechanisms that are at their disposal, the motion of no confidence being one, which is something that they learned from the National Assembly. You'll remember that during President Jacob Zuma's tenure in particular, there were multiple motions of no confidence that were used against him, and they did not pass. The opposition political parties understood that it required a 2/3 majority in order to remove a president through a motion of no confidence. And they didn't have that 2/3 majority. But however, as an opposition political party, you need to be seen to be doing something, utilizing those constitutional mechanisms, those democratic mechanisms that are at your disposal. And you'll see with the ATM right now, currently as we speak, the Section 89 inquiry into the Phala matter, they know very well that it requires a 2/3 majority in order to remove a president, but they need to be seen to be doing something, particularly because of the trias politica. The parliament needs to perform checks and balances on the executive. It's crucial. So the African National Congress is learning, but all these political games are detrimental to the residents of Ekurhuleni.
2/3 majority is what we've been hearing, as you said, from Jacob Zuma's tenure as president. And this is a numbers game. You know, it's all about numbers. And yesterday we saw how the ANC was at the back burner. They were supported in the city of Johannesburg by the EFF. Do you think that what happened in Ekurhuleni might affect the ANC's negotiations in Johannesburg come Friday, when they're supposed to table a motion of no confidence against Mapaseka?
Look, we've heard the EFF that they negotiate on a case-by-case basis. But I think what happened in Ekurhuleni will affect what happens in Johannesburg. And something interesting that the ANC in Ekurhuleni said on the sidelines of what's currently happening is that the ANC will not subject itself to the political administration of another political party. Now, this is particularly interesting. On the one hand, they are learning about these mechanisms that they need to use in order to hold mayors and other politicians accountable, right? But on the other hand, it seems that they have not fully reconciled themselves with the fact that the people have not given them that 50+1. So while they might be the biggest political party in these metros, they don't have that kind of pull to move on their own. And so they feel this entitlement, and that in every single coalition, in every single discussion that they're having, at the end of the day, they need to ensure that they themselves are the ones leading. They themselves field their own mayoral candidate. And so that's pretty tough. On the one hand, they're learning one thing, but they seem to not be, they are unable to reconcile themselves with the fact that they need to compromise in order for them to actually lead in some of these metros.
So then they're not exactly learning, are they, Mapaseka? Because it means that, you know, they're not exactly tabling these motions of no confidence against these two mayors, particularly in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, and actually at some point even in Nelson Mandela Bay, there was a motion against them, etc. But it looks like they're not learning, right? If you're going to be using these mechanisms, basically it looks like they're using these mechanisms to just regain power, not necessarily to show that an executive is underperforming.
I mean, on the one hand, like I said, as used in the National Assembly, you might, at the end of the day, expect that, hey, it might not work. But the fact that their constituency is seeing them doing something, that could be a win for them, right? But what they are not learning is the compromise and to be able to take some wins and some losses in other metros. So it's a tricky one for them. And the African National Congress, I think, particularly has an issue with this, where they like to remain stuck and they are able to unlearn certain things. I mean, they've spoken about renewal so many times, but it seems that they're struggling to renew themselves. Their political leaders seem to have, you know, criminal ambitions, from corruption to kidnapping, other issues that they're facing, money laundering, etc. So on the one hand, they say one thing, but on the other, they are unable to unlearn and do the things that they need to do.
And in the meantime, it is the residents that suffer. But if we had to tell the truth when it comes to Tanya Campbell, I think a lot of people agreed with what EFF leader Julius Malema said at some point in public, that they are going to vote for service delivery and not necessarily for a person. We saw their mayor candidate accepting nomination and then withdrawing a little later on, and that's what gave us the indication that talks with the ANC failed. But if we had to tell the truth, Tanya Campbell comes into an Ekurhuleni where services were not necessarily delivered there. It's not something new that the Tembisa residents have been complaining, and it was the ANC that was at the helm there since '94.
Correct. And I think, you know, the mayor has to do a lot to take the residents into her confidence, but also be honest about the current state of Ekurhuleni. What is it that's going wrong, particularly in terms of the finances? The fact that they can't remove rubbish on the streets, the electricity issue, the cable theft in that particular metro. They need to be honest. And if it is the case that they are unable to collect enough rates and taxes from the residents, then she needs to think about how the metro itself can actually generate income. You know what? The Constitution is actually very clear when it comes to local government, that one of its functions is economic development. But every single local government seems to be ignoring this. So Ekurhuleni is a metro that has, it's an industrial metro, right?
Exactly.
There are factories at her disposal.
Warehouses,
how does she,
mines.
Exactly. How does she utilize that in order to generate income so that she's not waiting for the rates and taxes, so that she's not waiting from conditional grants from national government? How can she be proactive, right? You can't sit there and say, oh, well, this is the case. I found it this way. What do I do? As a leader, you've been elected. You need to bring solutions. And I think that is her battle. And that's the Democratic Alliance's battle now, is how do you show that you can be proactive and actually generate income in Ekurhuleni?
But I guess this period, Mapaseka, I don't know if you agree with me, could possibly teach you and I as the electorate and whoever else is watching our conversation right now how important we are and how important municipal elections are to national government elections. Because I think for a long time, South Africans have been voting for a face or, you know, a certain face at national level, and that's who they basically related to all the time when it came to the political party, whether national or local government elections. But now I think this period will teach us how important it is that you look at local government elections and realize that that is what gives you or not gives you services.
Absolutely, 100%. We need to participate. I think it also speaks to how the mechanisms that are in play in government are sometimes inadequate in terms of political parties or politicians holding each other accountable. The fact that you can feel the motion of no confidence, but it requires a 2/3 majority. We've got the trias politica, we've got the judiciary, we've got legislature, we've got the executive. While there's a separation of power there, they also have a responsibility to perform checks and balances on each other. But we see the legislature unable to perform those checks and balances on the executive because the African National Congress has a majority in parliament. So it's political games instead of these mechanisms that are put in place actually doing what they're supposed to do. So if these mechanisms are not working, that means we the people, when we ensure that a political party has that 2/3 majority or has a majority in parliament or in council, then we know we can have the confidence to know that they can hold each other accountable. So it's very, very crucial that in 2024 and in local government, we actually go out there and we exercise that right. It's actually a responsibility as well because we hold them accountable.